What's up, guys? Hope everyone is doing well. In this video I'm going to be going over some updates for Bitcoin, but nonetheless, go ahead and get started. I first want to start out here on the 12-hour chart and leading into the two daily charts, two of them, go over these three main charts here that I've been pointing out recently. Here specifically on the 12-hour, we can see this violet or dark blue EMA here, the 800 estimated moving average highlighted, and how I've been pointing out in recent videos how this has been very important to the uptrend structure so far, with support being held really since the kind of the signal, the shooting of the gun to begin the bull market, which would have been the crossing above the price here, above the 800 EMA back during around March 2023. Ever since then, it has been acting as very key support during major impulses, as you can see here. If we look down here at the RSI, there's also a correlation with being in this highly oversold territory, anywhere from around 26 to around 17. There's also this upper zone here in yellow denoted, where each time we see the RSI move above this, it's generally associated with each of these major moves here for the price in Bitcoin. Now we're seeing something very similar recently, which is indicating that we're at the beginning of one of those moves. We're also seeing here, zooming in again, we're seeing this resistance here have been broken. The price moving all the way up back to prior all-time highs. So either we will see a retest and maybe get rejected and go lower. It could be a possibility. You may even see a test of down here, 90,000, maybe somewhere around the 200 EMA, 50 EMA here, maybe somewhere around 98, $97,000 or so. Or we will continue to see this kind of constructive stair-stepping behavior leading into a stronger impulse, which would be characteristic so far of the current bull market, especially with the latter legs of the overall impulses of the structure that I've pointed out. Looking here at this 2-day chart, you can see one of the things I've pointed out a few times is the Fibonacci here on the RSI, where the 618 can see here each time this is broken, such as it is done here recently. This lines up with each of these moves here. The price, some of the most notable moves after breaking these black resistances here of these notable correction periods, and also lining up with this below the 2.272 here, and a general horizontal range as the price has been building up through the bull market, showing a sequence of hidden bullish divergences here and there, sustaining the price action towards the upside despite things like bearish divergences. A lot of times seen that in these, you see these moves here on the higher time frame, such as here on the 2 daily. Zooming in on the lower time frame, you'll see a lot of that happening. For example, this price action here was heavily characterized by hidden bullish divergence. You can actually even see it here, where you see the RSI descending over this time period, such as the price is ascending, which then sustained the second move up here to 75,000. Here we see the 2-day chart with this ascending support zone in the bull market. We'll see again here some resistances on the RSI that have been very key here. There's also this zone here, which lines up with the actual 61.8 value of the RSI itself. It's not a Fibonacci retracement per se, such that it is literally just a 61.8 value line, but you can see here each of these times this line has been broken, such as it has been recently, lines up with notable impulses of the current bull market we've been in since the end of 2022. And we see some vector candles here with a zone going all the way down to 95.7. There's also one down here at 85.3. At this point, I'd be more inclined to see Bitcoin if it sees maybe some sideways action here at the prior all-time high, a slight correction maybe down to that around, so maybe more somewhere around 95, maybe 94 or 5 or so $1,000 approximately, if we're going to see some cooling off here as it's reaching for the first time since January of this year, all the way now fast forwarding to May, now coming back up to the all-time high zone, just anywhere from around 104 to that $109,000 all-time high so far. We look here at this weekly chart, we'll see something quite similar, where the main resistances, which this chart here is one of the main updates I have to give for each of these purple resistances here, are the dominant, are the primary resistances, and we see these second or secondary retracements here, these less dominant ones in black, where the retracements for these 3 periods are the more notable and significant ones, taking longer in duration, having more sizable movements towards the downside. And we can see each time, not just these 3 here, but with these 2 smaller ones and more intermediate ones as well. Every time the weekly candle closed above, it led to significant moves here towards the upside. With the prior weekly close, we see this happen here. Now, if we take a measurement of each of these breakouts, roughly around 65%, 60%, this one here, 20%, and then this entire one here would be 130%. I mean, anywhere from around, 20% would be, which I'm thinking it's going to be far higher than this, but around 123,000, 60% would be pushing 160,000, 134% would push it up towards around 230,000, which is where I generally think it's going to go, which I'll get to later on. As I've been saying, the range anywhere from around like 180 to around 230,000 approximately, maybe a little bit higher. I mean, obviously, who knows what's going to happen. It could, maybe, for all I know, for anybody knows, it's going to all the way up to 1 million this time around, and it's going to look something along these lines. I would have to imagine. I mean, if it goes to 1 million, it would go higher than this by the end of this year. It would be a very rapid move towards the upside, which one of the reasons why I don't personally think that's all too likely. But this right here is very important. If we look here at the RSI, again, we're seeing this uptrend zone that I've been pointing out. I've been pointing out getting above here on the weekly RSI. You can see that this has happened here. Again, just so many things, from the 12-hour, even the 4-hour, up to the dailies, the 2-daily, the bi-daily, these weekly charts here. All these things that I pointed out here. If you look here at the RVI, I was mentioning this line here to be broken. That happened recently as well. Also lining up with each of these notable moves here so far during the bull market. Seeing the MACD here again getting above the 0 point, going the lowest that it's been since literally the beginning of the bull market, the end of the bear market. Back here, yet the price was all the way up here at 78,000, higher than here, higher than here, higher than literally all of these points. Yet on the MACD, it got more oversold. So far, I've seen this MACD shaped like a megaphone, and I think that this is indicative of this time around, this current impulse that Bitcoin is on will be the most volatile and will have the highest percentage gain so far, which means that it would be at least under 20% or higher. And overall, if it's just at least 120% move, that would push it up to, rounding it up, so as a range, 160 to 170,000. But I mean, if it's going to go higher, pushing up to 200,000 would be 170%. Around towards 230,000 would be 210%. And again, I think that that's generally reasonable for various reasons. One of the things I've also mentioned here is beginning of the bull market for Bitcoin started out approximately 15,000, then moved up to 30,000, or you could say 16,000 to 32,000. Anyways, what you see here is a doubling in price. Then from here to here, $25,000 to $75,000 approximately. So we here see a 2x and then a 3x, and then this next move here being at 50,000, a 4x would then put it anywhere upwards towards approximately 200,000. Could go a little bit lower, maybe 180,000, could go a bit higher, maybe 220, 230,000, as I've pointed out. But this is generally a very interesting pattern I've seen so far, which leads me into this chart, which really kind of puts a capstone and kind of wraps a lot of this up, factoring in not only all this technical analysis leading up to this chart thus far, but factoring in fundamental news of the or more macroeconomic data as well, such as we see here this black line with the M2, and obviously I have Bitcoin down here. There's the sitting uptrend I pointed out in previous videos so far. Now with the M2, Bitcoin has had a correlation with it such that the peaks, the most notable peaks locally speaking of Bitcoin so far, have lined up with each of the notable peaks here for the M2 as well. And with these adjusted correctly, it projects if this pattern is going to follow through. So far it's 3 or 4 times, depending on how you look at it, is follow through. I think it's quite likely that it will follow through again, which would put the all-time high anywhere from around mid-June to mid-July, which just funnily enough lines up with as Trump on going back to April 9th, which funnily enough right here, right as Bitcoin is hitting 73,000, briefly go down to the 12-hour chart right here, right as it was hitting 800 EMA again, standard EMA has been very important so far, acting as support this entire time so far in the bull market. So we're seeing this technical thing or aspect data point line up with the April 9th. Trump announces the halting of reciprocal tariffs with the exception of China for 90 days, going into effect July 10th. This leads into July, or going into effect April 10th and leading into 90 days later, 3 months later, July 9th, which again is just lining up with the projection here. We look here at the uptrend so far with the bull market. The projection for the M2, the 90-day halt of the tariffs, would put Bitcoin anywhere from around 200 to 230,000 sometime around, let's say, late June, July, early August. This would again line up with the M2 projection. This factors in the fundamental macroeconomic data pertaining to the tariffs and how that led to downturn in the markets. All the stock market, Bitcoin, and crypto didn't really get too much affected by that, but we're seeing a lot of things find confluence here, not only within the technical world, as for these charts I've gone over, but also fundamentally, macroeconomic data, the M2, the tariffs, which clearly are affecting the market at this point. I believe, looking here at this weekly chart, had the tariffs not been put into place back sometime around this point in time for Bitcoin, I think, and we wouldn't have had that effect of the tariffs and its negativity on the markets, I think Bitcoin would have actually went up here and continued to move up and initiate the leg that we're currently on earlier rather than later. But since the tariffs obviously are going to affect Bitcoin as an open system, interacting and coexisting with the world around it in terms of societal, macroeconomic, global, intercontinental affairs that clearly have an effect on the market psychologically and in various other ways. But really, the main point here is that the technical data here, you can see something very similar in the RSI, where we're seeing all these technical data points line up with these broader data points. We look here at the 2-week, we also see here the money flow index is also turning up to break this trend here, which this is one of the last things that in terms of the indicators and the signals that I pointed out in a number of the videos going back over the last month or so. So not necessarily everything so far, but so many things at this point are seeming to just fall into place here. Again, as I've said, really emphasizing technically and fundamentally, macroeconomically, and perhaps, going back to this chart, with Bitcoin continues to go higher here, it is accurately projected by the M2 associated with the 90-day pause in the tariffs. We'll see Bitcoin move up to this bull market uptrend zone, fine rejection as, let's say, the tariff war or the tariff battle right now, again, there's being the halt on it to at least to some degree, resumes in full force and full effect here. This ends up marking the top. We've already seen the halting of tariffs down here mark the local bottom here for what I believe to be the final impulse. Makes some degree of sense, especially that it would line up with the M2 here and its projection, which has worked, since basically the end in end of 2022, early 2023. Who's to say that perhaps the reinitiating of a tariff war, a tariff battle, is not going to be what marks the top of the current bull market, fundamentally, along with, I'm sure, a lot of technical data points printing that would lead towards an all-time high there as well. Whether or not it's in these charts here, you can see, or if it's on chain data itself, which again, this 2-weekly chart again generally shows the same picture, where the around $200,000 to $230,000 level also lines up the 382 to the 618 of this ascending Fibonacci, or I think it's an inside pitchfork channel. But lastly here on the monthly, to really again point out the all-time high range, with one of the main point of this video being the confluence and the support that both the technical and the fundamental world and its data points are giving for Bitcoin in the charts. Here we can see each of these Fibonacci extensions here for these major moves here of Bitcoin, where we see this first extension here is of the bear market of phase 1 of cycle 2, then we see the bear market of phase 2 for cycle 2 here, then we just rinse and repeat. Cycle 3 begins phase 1, and you can see each of these times the phase 1 ends here in this orange zone. Phase 2 does so here again, ending in this orange zone, which averaging out all of these orange levels, which are corresponsive to, you know, for example, the candle close here or the wick close or wick high here. Same thing for here, and it creates this orange range. So I did it with respect to the candles. When you average those out, funnily enough, and it does average out to approximately 2.272. So this generally seems to be the 272 here. 2.272 here seems to be going all the way back to the beginning of cycle 2, all the way back here to 2011 June into November, December 2011. So far, this has been the all-time high range. So again, that anywhere from around 180,000 to around 250,000 or so. This is also once more validated by the, as I pointed out, the 2x here from 15 to 30,000, the 3x here from 25 75,000. Next line, or the next number in the pattern, 4x here from 50,000 upwards towards somewhere approximately 200,000. And it could also be higher given that this is really the final thrust in the bull market. There's also this monthly resistance ascending here that I think is going to be rather important. I believe the candle that breaks this will probably be the big candle of this move. As you can see here on the monthly chart, with each of these moves, there's been obviously this first one here and this one here. But if you look here at the second one, I have more price action analyzed. There's really mainly, there's this one candle here and this candle here that have big moves. So we've already seen this, the first move, and then this, the second move would be synonymous to here. We see the first move, now we're seeing the second move, such that this here was the first move, this is the second move, and we just again saw an impulse 5-stage pattern here overall, where each of those impulses were shaped into ABC movements. And you see the first candle, big candle here. So I think this move here is due for at least one big candle, and I think that'll probably be the candle that breaks this. And you know, maybe it pushes up to around $160,000 just in one monthly candle, and that could be probably more so towards late June or so, July, depending upon if it's going, when Bitcoin specifically is going to top out at. But closing a monthly candle above 130,000 or 32,000 will also be a resistance to note going over the next few months. Lastly here, I want to point out the 6-month chart. As I've been saying in the last number of videos, again over the last month or so, 2 months maybe the longest. I don't honestly quite remember how long it's been that I've been going over a lot of these charts. But on the 6-month, I've been pointing out how, where you can see here, there was cycle 1 here, and then you see here there's cycle 2, and now we're on cycle 3. So far we're getting to the end of phase 1, such that you can see here we have an all-time high set here, red candle bear market, and then we see these candles close above, then we see the first red candle, then this bear market, and we can see the resistance here broken. Red candles always initiate the bear market once we see these 6-month candles close above the prior all-time high, move higher. So given that we recently, over the last few years, we've seen Bitcoin move back above the prior all-time high here, this current 6-month candle had been red recently, but with this recent move towards the upside, it's flipped back into green. Over the next month and 20 days, there still is time to obviously change that state, but at this point it seems like it's going to continue to go up. But as long as this candle here closes green, that will avert the crisis of the pattern here, which again means that if this current 6-month candle closes red, according to this history since 2011, then on the 6-month that would initiate the upcoming bear market. But as this closes green, everything is all good to go. And then lastly, on the 12-month chart, we can see here that each bull market since 2015 here has been 3 candles. We're on the 3rd candle, which would mean the all-time high sometime this year. And so far, again, as I pointed out, it made, I feel, fairly clear in various different ways that Bitcoin still has this last leg here towards the upside sometime in 2025, might be sometime around summer, as I pointed out more specifically in what would be my current bias in this video, or perhaps we'll push closer towards Q4, closer towards winter this year, which would also be something that could be supported by historical price movement and times a year when Bitcoin likes to top out during, according to its structure and price progression over time of the phases and the cycles. But that was all that I wanted to go over, cover, and update in this video. As always, none of this is meant to be financial advice, and who knows just exactly what is going to happen but every now and then something, and all these little projections and these little guesses that people want to take, whoever it may be, sometimes things end up being right. But all that being said and everything gone over, I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Ooh, I'm regretting